Okay, everybody, it's time. No more books that I technically liked but just made the bottom 10 because I had a really good reading year. It is time for the 4 books that I read this year that I disliked. And at the end of the last video, I said to grab your pitchforks for the next one, but I was lying because I forgot about book 4 and I got the order mixed up. But there will be some pitchfork grabbing. Anyway, enjoy the video, everyone. Because, the dead man said, as if leading a very stupid pupil to an obvious truth. Because black is the color of madness, Gavin said hollowly. So, for number 4 on this list, I read My Cat. Oh, you see that? I subverted your expectations. Do you see I do that? You weren't expecting me. You were expecting me to show you a book here, and instead I showed you a cat. Except in this case, I subverted your expectations with something better, because obviously you'd rather look at the cat than the book. Brent Weeks will subvert, with The Blood Mirror, by Brent Weeks, your expectations will be subverted, similar to what I just did. But instead, your expectations will be subverted with something worse. Yeah, so in fact, the Brent Weeks thing would be like, Changes by Jim Butcher, Upside Down. You didn't see that coming. It doesn't make sense? No. Did you say this list was no rereads? Well, no, but you probably say it in the description, and this is obviously a reread, so... Anyway. Brent Weeks, the king of ruining his own story by subverting your expectations 678 times. That's what killed The Blood Mirror for me. So, this is the first book that if you ask me if I like it, I'm going to say no. I did not like this book. In fact, I gave it a 4.9, and I have it 4. That's probably going to go down in the future. I only like this book less as I go on. But the thing I need to remember is that the Tia plot in this book rules and is great. And the combat's really good. But there's a character who does not work as a super passive, inactive character. And he does nothing in this book. Lots of people, really all the people who are your favorite, don't expect them to do anything meaningful in this book. And anything they do that's meaningful will probably be undone in future books. Like, it wasn't important. Anyway, so there's an art in plot twists. And usually, most really good plot twists, you read the plot twist and you go like, not only is my mind blown, but it was obviously always like that the entire time. And like you think about it on rereads and you're like, how did I not see it? And this is in The Blood Mirror. You read a plot twist and you go, that changes everything. Also, all the what? That doesn't make any sense. Now, if he did this once or twice, this would be fine. But he does this like every 3rd chapter. Everything you've been told is a lie. It's all wrong. Totally different. And not only that, but if there were just no plot twists, I think the situation is more interesting. Like, each plot twist is less interesting than what you thought before. And by the end, you get to my least favorite plot twist in the history of fiction that is a straight-up retcon of one of the most interesting parts of the series. It's like, yeah, you know the thing you were really interested in, you were really cool, that dynamic you loved, it was a lie. Ha, I've subverted your expectations. You thought I was writing a good series, but I was writing a bad one. Man. The Tia stuff is really good. The Tia stuff is really good. I need to keep saying it to myself. Also, Brent Weeks is really good at setting things up. Never pays him off. Like, there's so many moments in this where he set it up, and you can do the thing that would be like, normally it wouldn't feel too easy. But then he's like, no, we're not doing that. All that setup, that like really good setup, was for nothing. And I'd rather he just didn't set it up. I'm gonna go put changes back and cool down. This is not a bottom 10 book. Mike, so you can hear me from over here. It's great. I can even talk quietly. But The Blood Mirror. Man, this or the next book, it would be my most disappointing book on the year, because I liked book 2 more than book 1, and I liked book 3 more than book 2, and I really liked book 1. So it was like trending, crash. Man, this made this series so hard to recommend for me. Like, I would be recommending this series all the time, where it's like, oh, you like Stormlight? I don't think this is as good as Stormlight, but it's kind of like, it has a lot of the same pros, like positives, not quite as good, but like, it's really solid series. Now I find it hard to recommend. Man, this really killed my enjoyment of the series. And like, I guess some people really like the plot twists, because some people really like this book, but man, each plot twist was worse than the last for me, and it took really a character I loved, and it was like, just, now I feel like if I go read book 1, I'm gonna just be annoyed because I know what will happen. It'll be like an anti-Stormlight reread, where the knowledge of what will happen makes it better. Anyway, I messed up in recording, and I actually already recorded number 3, because I forgot about the Blood Mirror. But you can go see the thing I already recorded. You can go be mad at me. So actually, at the end of the last one, I was like, the really popular book, you're going to get mad at me? Yeah, it wasn't the Blood Mirror. You're going to get way more mad at me for that. A lot of people don't like the Blood Mirror, but this one is like, ugh. Anyway, you can go watch that now. Anyway, so even though there's 3 left for you, there's only 2 left for me. So let us continue. She undid the buckles on one side of her breastplate, pulled it open, and let it clatter down. It was not protection against a swordsman of his skill, and the weight of it was only tiring her. Everyone, I want you to gather your pitchforks, because not only am I putting a very popular, well-loved book as number 4, but I didn't even read the entire thing. I only read 54% of it. So I guess the last 46% could be the best thing ever, but when I say this book in general, I mean the first 54%. But that being said, I actually think if I read all of it, it would be lower, because this is like, I was really starting to hate read the book, and instead of hate reading it and growing to read it more, I just put it down. But it's Best Served Cold by Joe Abercrombie. One of my favorite working authors, which is ironic because I just put 2 books on my top 10 least favorite books of the year list. But trust me, I promise I'm a Joe Abercrombie fan. But I'm just not a fan of Best Served Cold. So, Jake, what don't I like about this book that everyone else seems to love? Well, first let's talk about the Joe, get it out of the way. Joe Abercrombie's still a master of voice in this book. He did not forget how to write this book in general. From a technical standpoint, this is an extremely well-written novel. All the characters have unique voices. The prose is great. He's good at dry humor. All of that stuff he's still good at. But it has a lot of pitfalls that I don't have with any of the other Joe Abercrombie books. So let's start with number 1. This is a revenge story. I have never given less of a single fuck on whether a character got revenge or not. Through this entire book, I was like, just retire, moron. Like, the main character, I would, if you had her tragically, randomly die, 40% into the book, I would have not cared at all. I would have been like, cool. I don't have to follow that person anymore. If she wants to trip on a route and die on page 600, I could not care less. It's just retire, girl. It's sunk cost fallacy. Anyway, the next thing, obviously Joe Abercrombie does not write good people. But the charm of Joe Abercrombie is, despite the fact that the characters he writes are objectively shit people, you still root for them, usually. No. Well, some of them. Shivers, yes. Friendly at first. Koska, maybe. Those guys, Shivers I was rooting for. The others, Morveer, Morveer's one, just the worst. Anyway. So, in general, I wasn't attached to the story, and I wasn't really attached to, 4 out of 6 of the characters. The others have, in general, so Joe Abercrombie's really good at having voice, and also a lot of his characters have expressions. This was the only book where I actually was worried, like, it felt like the voice was like cheap tricks, where a lot of the characters had like a quirk. Like Friendly's OCD with numbers and liked being in prison when he was in prison. And that was his character. Like, for the 54% of this book I read, he never really did anything that went against his core premise as a character. So none of these people, except Shivers, none of the non-Shivers people in this book felt like people to me. Because they never... Like, a lot of them, they had a quirk, like Morveer and Friendly, both had their quirks, and they just always went with what their kind of, what, if you were to put down on a notes, like, the 5 key aspects of their characters, they're ridiculously consistent, well past the point of being human for those 5 things. And it didn't make them feel like people, and also their voices... They kept focusing on the same things over and over again, and their voices got so repetitive to me. Like, even with Logan Ninefingers, who I think, objectively speaking, is probably the most, repetitive voice, but it never felt like Logan, like the stuff was being shoot in, where a lot of times for sayings, for me, it was like, it just felt like he was putting in those sayings to add the voice, not that we were actually seeing it from the character's eyes. But none of these are actually my biggest issue with this book. Because I had those issues for the entire first half. And I was kind of like, whatever. It's still really funny and well written. It'll probably be like a 6 out of 10 or something. But the thing that killed this for me was the insane plot armor Monza had. Like, to a ridiculous degree. And, like, this is, I feel like in Joe Abercrombie, I'm going to be more harsh on that for other authors. Because when you're writing grimdark, plot armor stands out way more. Like, if I'm reading, I don't know, if I go read another Discworld book, and someone has plot armor, it's Discworld. It's absurd. Whatever. Someone has plot armor, it's absurdism. I'm probably not, might not even notice. But the entire premise of the First Law world is your bad decisions are supposed to fuck you. And Monza is immune to this. So, there was one fight scene that may be my least favorite fight scene I read this year. Can I think of a fight scene I like less in any book I've read? I don't know. It basically had all the bad, like, fantasy cliches mashed into, like, one chapter. So we had a duel, and it's like, oh, Monza's right hand doesn't work, so she's fighting with her left hand. And the person she's fighting is like, I shall also use my left hand. And I'm like, just fucking kill her, you moron. And then, like, he wins, and he's like, we'll do best 2 out of 3. And I'm like, dude, you live in this world. How have you not already died from acting like that? Like, the point, half of the theme of Joe Abercrombie is you can't be a, like, person like this because the world will punish you. But this guy apparently can. So, meanwhile, someone throws a knife and it full-on decapitates someone. Supposed to be grounded realism. Also, Monza, in the same fight, I read this as the quote, so you heard this. She's like, this armor won't provide any protection because he's good at sword fighting. It's not how armor works. Stop taking your armor off, fantasy character. Although, actually, maybe Monza is Galaxy Brain, and she realized that she has insane plot armor, which weighs nothing. And so then she takes off her real armor. And then meanwhile, someone gets angry enough that the functionality of his body mechanics don't matter. Grounded realism. Don't worry, it's grounded realism. Anyway, so there's the best served cold rat. Man, the people who love this book are gonna be mad at me. And I kind of, like, I get why you love this book. I get why you like it, but man, I don't. I think it says, like, I know this is kind of a me problem in that I still tell people to read Best Served Cold, The Heroes, and Red Country before A Little Hatred. So, even though I'm saying I don't like this book, I found it to be bad. I gave it 4.5 out of 10. If I read the entire thing, it'd probably get lower. you should still read it if you read the first 3, because statistically, I'm an insane outlier. Anyway, that's 4. 3 to go. This wasn't supposed to be 4. This was supposed to be 3. I said 4 at the start, but in the ranking, this is going to be 3. I'm just realizing I forgot The Blood Mirror, which you've already seen. So that means for Traitor's Blade, when I said a popular book, I then thought Blood Mirror's popular enough. Whatever. We're moving on back in time to The Blood Mirror. But really, next you're going to not see The Blood Mirror. Whatever. No more armor. So, on my scale, a 4 out of 10 is a clearly flawed book, but with redeeming qualities. We'll have lots of negative things to say about it, as you've just seen, but there are still a couple good things I like, even if they are outweighed by the bad stuff. We are now below that level. And I, once again, don't have the physical book, because, once again, it's great quotes. Sorry, Sebastian de Castel. I feel bad because I actually think you're a good writer, and I would maybe read something else in your series, but I don't like this series. And it's Night Shadow. I'm one of the 7 people who like it less than Traitor's Blade. It kind of fixes some of the things in Traitor's Blade, like it improves on some aspects, but it basically, like, Traitor's Blade there were some things I really liked about it and some things I really hated about it. Night Shadow there were some things I disliked about it but didn't hate, and almost very little I actually, like, enjoyed. Like, I felt it lost a lot of its charm compared to Traitor's Blade, and that, like, yeah, it got rid of some of the bad things, kind of, but if I were to rank the top 5 fight scenes from the first 2 books, and I think combat's one of the things, like, D. Castell's really good at, like, even though I don't like his series, if I were to do a fantasy action power ranking, or, like, tier list, he'd be A tier for sure. But I think all 5 of my favorite fight scenes would be in Traitor's Blade. I don't think I'd name a single one from Saint's Blood. It still has some ridiculous things and some, like, but the Deus Ex Machinas have some setup. Like, the 2 biggest, like, cavalry things actually have good setup. Now, some of the ones, like, if you actually think logically about it, like, the setup doesn't actually make sense if you look at, like, how hard it is. Like, it's a thing involving, like, longbows, and yeah, longbows, it's hard to learn how to shoot a 160-pound longbow. That's a multi-year long endeavor. But those are nitpicks, you know? And I don't need to nitpick this book, because really my biggest issue with this book is the change in Falchio's kind of primary internal struggle. His first internal struggle, more of his internal dialogue was about struggling to do the right thing and to follow the code he believed in, even if it was really hard, which I love. Big on that. This internal struggle involved Athalia a lot more, and a lot of his internal conflict was about that. And I wasn't bored by this. I was actively infuriating. I didn't have a physical book, so I couldn't punch it, but I wanted to, like, hit it when I read that. Like, this is terrible. I hate that internal conflict. It's so... that killed. So I took the protagonist I really liked in book 1, and I didn't like him at all in book 2. Because his main internal conflict changed to something that I loved, to something stupid. And I find I get, like, the books I really dislike are usually not from boredom, it's because I'm angry at them. I mean, you can probably tell that from the last few. I wasn't really bored by this book. Like, I read it in, like, a few days, but I was angry at it. And the next thing is the relationship and, like, the character beats with the side characters. The side characters really do have personality. I'll give them that. But I found a lot of the character beats between Falchio and the side characters started to feel really repetitive. Like, I think there were probably 3 or 4 characters who effectively had conversations that, if you were to, like, summarize, are, like, almost the same conversation of, they call Falchio, like, an idiot. And Falchio's kind of like, oh, gosh, darn. And they basically say, yeah, Falchio, you're hopeless. And he's kind of like, says something moderately clever. And then they're like, maybe he says something clever. And it's like, maybe you're not that hopeless. And then he says something dumb again. They're like, well, you're dumb. And it's like, but we're still going to follow you because of like who you are. And that was good the first time. But that's kind of his, other than the insults, that's like his main dynamic with a lot of people. And there's assassin groups. And man, some stuff with the assassin groups is stupid in this. Like even, all right, Alan, if you're watching this, like, come on, you got to give me that. Like the stuff with the assassin group was really stupid. Like, come on. So, very minor spoil warning. Like, this is voiceover Jake now. I spoiled way too much on this, so I'm cutting it out. But basically, there's assassins. That's right, I'm talking over me not talking. We're doing the voiceover like this. There was assassin stuff, and there's an assassin group, and there was something really dumb with them, and we're going to leave it at that. This book has cool quotes, though, which I think since I've kind of been mean to Castell, I'm actually going to include for, like, my quote reading. I included a good, I haven't actually planned what I'm going to do, but I think I'm going to do a good quote for this book. The others I've been kind of trying to do ironic bad quotes that kind of, like, show why I didn't like it, but I think I'm going to give this book a good quote. Because I really feel bad for Castell here. I've really been rough on him when I actually think he is a good author. Just wrote this series that I didn't like. I would consider reading something else more he wrote in the future. Anyway, we are going to, even though this is number 2, it wasn't close to me in number 1. We are going to now, let's talk about my number 1 least favorite book of 2020. By far, this got a 3.5 out of 10. We're moving on. The pain hit him like a waterfall of icy water. So, shocking, absolutely 0 people who talked to me on Discord after I read this book. My number 1 least favorite book of the year is Wizard's First Rule by Terry Goodkind. So, I'm gonna start again with the positives. We're gonna try. Okay, the writing is very clear. You will very rarely be confused. I again don't have the physical copy of this book. I guess like if you are someone who English isn't your first language and you want something with like really clear writing, maybe this would be digestible. Read Sanderson though, like his is also really clear and the books are way better. But if you're done Sanderson and you're like, I just want something with very clear writing, I guess this would qualify. It accomplishes this by being extremely redundant and repeating information an absurd amount of times. But it's clear. You won't be confused. Pretty much ever. So that's good. Zed is, I think, a pretty good take on a wise wizard. This is maybe my only probe that doesn't have an asterisk next to it. I think Zed is actually just straight up a pretty interesting take on the wise wizard. And he's almost, despite, like, obviously all the wise wizards are influenced by Gandalf, he's almost in some ways the exact reverse of Gandalf, where Gandalf is all about, like, trusting, like, the wisdom of your heart, and, like, he gives that advice a lot. Zed, way more focused on, like, being rational and, like, logic, and not trusting your instincts, and that your instincts might actually suck. Which is an interesting take. So I'll give Zed that. All right, that's it for positives. That's all I got. Oh, so actually, some world building stuff is kind of cool. Okay. This, I have to hold myself back because the rant for Wizard's First Rule could be as long as like the entire video. But okay, let's start. I complained about internal consistency in the last book, but oh boy, internal consistency. I guess apparently a few of these things, it's actually like later on they're explained. But in this book, for any like magic related stuff, I don't think any of the implications of any of the world building stuff was introduced was even considered, other than like the primary influence. So as an example, there are people called confessors who are kind of cool. They're like the idea behind them. The issue is that they walk around. They're all women and they wear dresses and they're not trained in combat and they win by touching you. And And they're seen as like one, and if they touch you, basically they enslave you. And I'm not going to spoil the way they do, but you're be completely under their control. And they're like one confessor can take down like a kingdom just by walking up and touching people. And now the thing he forgot about here, other than it's kind of ridiculous that like in a one-on-one fight, it's kind of like that a confessor versus a trained soldier. The book tells you that a confessor will win 100% of the time and is in zero danger, which is of course completely insane. Like if you're an untrained fighter against a trained fighter with a sword, you're probably just gonna die before you can touch them. But anyway, he also forgot bow and arrows exist. Like you just shoot him. Like if you were a kingdom and it's like a confessor's coming, bang, that was hard. You'd shoot him. And it's not even like they're stealth. Like, they all wear the same thing, and they don't sneak up on you. They're just like, yeah, so that like, not considered at all. There's two types of magic. There's, like, subtraction magic and an additive magic. And the most common magic is additive magic, which is you can create things, which is fine. You're allowed to break Newton's laws. It's internally consistent. But how the hell does the economy work? You can create food. Like, a wizard could just go around and just create whatever he wanted. For someone whose main influence was Ayn Rand, the economic considerations of this were completely ignored. So anyway, world-building-wise, there's some cool ideas, but nothing other than... This is just the two examples I'm going to give, because I don't want to talk about it for 20 minutes. But nothing other than, like, the most basic impacts of anything that's different than Earth is at all considered. Now, so, this one is actually going to be a con with an asterisk, because I still think this book is relatively unoriginal, but I also think it would be an exaggeration to say that it blatantly stole things. I think one character is blatantly stolen, and that is that Smeagol is in this book. Just straight up. Like, if I read you... If I described the introduction scene to this character... You would straight up think I meant the scene where Smeagol got introduced. So its name is Samuel, who used to have the most powerful magical artifact, but has since lost it and is corrupted and has become a very small thing that's like grayish and wears like tattered clothes and talks to himself. And also, he has really wiry, long fingers, and he's, like, really wiry, but he's strangely strong and smells bad. I wish I was joking. So you might be like, Jake, you just literally described Smeagol. No, doesn't quite have two personalities. Very original character. Basically, just Smeagol. Take away the most interesting part of Smeagol. Anyway, so, other than dollar store Smeagol thing, though, I actually don't think it's super... I don't think it steals anything else. Like, I've heard people say that Richard is, like, a copy of Rand. I think not at all. Zed, as I already said, I think is distinct from Gandalf. Like, his name starts with R. And I guess role-wise he's similar, but I think as a person, very fundamentally different person. The way he sees the world and the way he acts. Same thing with, like, really most of the characters, I don't think any... Like, there's an Aragorn character, but I think even though similar, like, there's lots of tropey characters who are, like, clearly a trope, but I don't think there's any, like, one character you can be like, yeah, that character is actually just straight up ripping off someone else other than Samuel. So, now let's talk about character. Some of the characters in this were moderately okay, but also... The most boring, one-dimensional character I've read in fiction is there, and that's Rachel. So this is the school of how to do child characters, according to this book. So what you do, first, you're going to take their personality, and you're going to want to get rid of that. You don't need that. Children don't have personalities anyways. And then what you're going to do is you're going to have them use the word bestest a lot. Congratulations, you have now written Rachel, a POV character for a significant section of this book. Man, the Rachel chapters hurt. Like, they were just mind-numbingly boring. And I don't even like Richard that much, but when we went from a Rachel to a Richard chapter, I was, like, fist-pumping. Speaking of Richard in the first 2 chapters, you see some flaws he has. Those are then forgotten by chapter 3, except when rotates back and forth between being the smartest person of all time who figures things out about the world that the person who's lived their entire life in the world and is also supposedly quite smart never has figured out, and he's like a super genius. And then he will also be like the stupidest, in some ways, like the stupidest fantasy character I've ever read. I'm normally not someone who's bothered by characters being stupid. I used to be, but I actually find it relatively believable. It very, very rarely bothers me. Like, there's some Wheel of Time characters who do dumb things, didn't bother me. Tao from The Rage of Dragons is a dumbass sometimes, never bothered me. Fitz does some dumb things, really never bothered me at all. But this hit past a threshold. So, he just was told, like, ridiculously important information, and then instantly discounts it as unimportant and just forgets it happens. And just really, Richard is the strangest combination of being way smarter than everyone else and always right, despite the fact that he should be way less experienced, and also the stupidest human to ever exist in the history of the planet. I'm sure there are more things I dislike about this book, but man. Oh yeah, the writing. The writing itself, it's so clunky. And also, like, the first few chapters, like, this book made me dislike the word friend. Because they'll be like in conversation when they're introducing someone. They'll be like, if I was introducing my cat, who I'm going to pretend is my friend, I'd be like, oh look, it's my friend Vin. Have you all met this cat who's my friend, Vin? And then someone, this is like an actual thing. So he's introducing, it's like, oh, who's this group? And it's like, I'm Richard. This is my friend Zed. This is my friend Kaylin. This is my friend Chase. Then like 2 pages later, they ask who's that specifically, and he goes, my friend. Like, god damn it. Also, like, insta-love-ish, but more like insta super ultra best friends forever, no considerations. Like, just met each other. It's like, yep, you're my friend. I've decided that I will now call you my friend every page for the next 150 pages. Later, there will actually be some relationship building for the first 150 pages. Nope. We will just refer to each other as friends forever from now on. Okay? 2 thumbs up. And then I will say there was some section where Kaylin and Ray relationship, there actually was some good development of it, and I actually started to believe that they were friends. And there was a section with the Mud People, which I thought was not terrible, which is basically what caused this book to be a 2.5 out of 10 and not like a 1 out of 10. Anyway, that about wraps up Wizard's First Rule. So, the next video after this will be my top 15 favorite books of 2020, which will feature 2 authors that were on this list. And it's 15 because I read way more good books than I read bad books this year. And honestly, there were just the books from 10 to 15, 11 to 15. I looked at them and there's no chance that those shouldn't be on any list. Like, anyway, so if you like some of these books, which you almost certainly do, let me know in the comments why I'm dead wrong and totally ridiculous. And, also which books of these you were maybe also disappointed with. But these didn't work for me. Some of them were kind of iffy, but that's all I got for my top 10 least favorite books I read in 2020. All in all, the fact that books like Baptism of Fire and The Stand are on this list tell you that this was a damn good reading year for me. Bye, everyone.